So I have a little teepee structure of small sticks that's kind of on top of a bed of some bigger sticks. And then underneath that bed of sticks is the foundation of the rocks. So yeah, there's the foundation of the rocks, and then all the sticks that are going around the rocks. And so a lot of people, there's a lot of different ways to build a sweat lodge fire. Pretty common is to see where the rocks sit on top of the fire. But I actually like to heat the rocks as slowly as possible, because the rocks that we have here, because we're uplifted, the rocks are folded, and there'll be other veins of different types of rock that are within the rock. So if you heat these ones too quickly, they split apart and you end up with just shards. So I'm pretty careful with how I heat the stones. And so yeah, about an hour and a half is about as much as these stones really need. So so the aim of this lodge is not a ton of heat. I think of the heat in the sweat lodge is it's really to get you to relax your physical mind, so that your spiritual mind, your earth-connected mind, can just be a little bit more open. So I learned the sweat lodge, as well as a number of other ceremonies, from somebody who learned them directly from Lipan Apache. The Lipan Apache's, the translated name was Stalking Wolf. And Stalking Wolf met my teacher when my teacher was about 7, and he stayed with him until he was around 18 or closer to 19. So 11 years he learned from him, and my teacher Tom referred to him as grandfather, just as like a sign of respect. And grandfather spent his life wandering North and South America. His parents were actually killed in a border skirmish in South Texas, North Mexico, in the Sierra Madre Mountains when he was 7 years old, and he was raised by his great uncle and his great uncle's clan. And they lived like a completely, I don't want to say completely invisible existence, but because the Apache, especially in that area, it was considered a raiding culture. They didn't grow crops to get their food, so historically they were known for raiding mostly the Hopi and the Navajo, but the Lipan weren't really involved in that. They were a little bit more pressured by the Comanche. So they mostly lived off of the land, and because of warfare being part of their history, they had a society of scouts where they basically lived invisibly because they had to. They were outnumbered. So anyhow, his clan lived pretty much invisibly for most of his entire life. So he never lived on a reservation, and he met my teacher when he was in his late 70s. And he lived for another number of years before, after he left teaching my teacher, Tom. So he had two visions in his life. One was to learn all of the survival skills that he could and to pass them on, but his greater vision was to learn all of the different spiritual teachings that he possibly could learn, and not to distill them down, but to discover what the roots of the spiritual teachings were. So if he learned something, even things from his own clan, that he realized, okay, well, this particular ceremony, you have to have this specific herb, and there has to be this specific timing, and anything that couldn't be done without any bells or whistles, he didn't reject it as dogma, but he didn't teach it as something that was a spiritual truth. So what he passed on to my teacher was all based on common spiritual truths. Now, it's the ceremony that we're doing tonight, the lineage is very ancient as far as the prayers that are said. It's the things that are left out that might make it dogmatic, if that makes sense. Things that would be specific to that tribe, that would be specific to those people living in that times, or people who are indoctrinated in that lineage, so to speak. Um, so, so that was his main vision, was to learn what was pure spiritual teaching, something that you could take into a wilderness setting and it would still have power. It would still have a connection to spirit, and you wouldn't need any go-between. That was mostly what he was focused on. The other part was important as well, learning all the different survival skills. But that was his main vision, and he passed everything on that he knew to my teacher, and my teacher teaches it in that same way. So all of that backstory is to say that whatever spiritual teaching you come to a ceremony that I'm involved in, that I'm running, is totally fine, and that there's a place for all of those different teachings. There's a commonality to all those teachings. So maybe there's certain symbolism in your spiritual practice. There's a place for that in what my teacher's teacher taught. You might call it a spirit, somebody else might call it an angel, there might be a different word for that, but that entity is represented in his teachings. So all of that is to say that there's nothing dogmatic whatsoever about this. So I know that a lot of different traditions have like restrictions on women on their moon time, on men when certain things happen in their lives. That is not what this particular ceremony is. I don't really observe any of those specific teachings, and neither did my teacher's teachers. The lineage never really recognized any of those restrictions, and the way the teaching came down to us is that, when I say us, I mean other people that I've learned this with, is that this specific ceremony is it's really a gift for you to be able to connect with the landscape, with your personal lineage, and then obviously there's some stuff from the lineage that I've learned that's part of this ceremony as well. But it's nothing to indoctrinate you or to step on any of your spiritual or philosophical toes. So the way this was taught to me was that a ceremony is basically designed to bring everybody into the same space at the same time. And that's really all a ceremony is supposed to be for. Pipe ceremony, sweat lodge ceremony, Boy Scout merit badge ceremony. The whole idea is for everybody to be focused on the same thing at the same time, because as humans, because we can work together, we can create a harmonic. And maybe right now isn't the time for your spiritual or energetic prayers to be answered, but maybe somebody else who's in this group, it's their time. And our prayers are carried together through the harmonic that we create. So I like to keep it very simple as far as what is the reason why we're all gathering here for this ceremony. I was taught that there was 7 sacred reasons to have a ceremony, usually, and this rarely varies, usually only with people who I've done a number of lodges with. Typically with a group like this, where there's some people first time, some people have done it a little bit done maybe a little bit, or
a lot more, yeah. There, Karen, and there are a few people here that have done quite a few lodges, yeah.
So this lodge tonight specifically is, I was feeling that this was cleansing and healing.
Yep.
And I find it hard to escape that it's hard to do a sweat lodge where there's not some learning involved. So yes, I guess I'll probably keep it as that as far as what we're doing here. This is for cleansing, this is for healing, and it's been my experience that learning is also happening when there's cleansing and healing that's going on. So that's why we're doing the lodge: cleansing, healing, maybe learning a little bit about our own visions, about our connection to the earth. All of the ceremonies that we teach, and we haven't really gotten into teaching some of the other stuff, but we do plan on teaching some of the, I don't know what to call it, meditative practice. I have no idea what to call it. My teacher just calls it spiritual skills. It's a spiritual skill set. And that spiritual skill set is based upon listening to the earth and listening to nature, because nature is a constant. Even if you're in a huge city, there's nature around. There's weather, there's birds. Nature has an influence everywhere. And so as far as having a spiritual practice where you can get an answer, where you can get some guidance, nature is the baseline of all religions and all spiritual practices, because it's the baseline of our lives. Until we live on the moon, in which case we're going to be taking pieces of the earth with us to live on the moon, if that's what happens. So we'll always be surrounded by the earth.